Stories of Futures Past presents 5 stories featuring robots, Volume 3. I, Gardener by Alan Kim Lang. My Robot by Henry Slesar. There Will Be School Tomorrow by V. E. Thiessen. Robots of the World, Arise by Mary Wolfe. He Who Served by Ray Cummings. I, Gardener by Alan Kim Lang. Originally published in Fantastic, December 1959. Narrated by Tom Trussel. I had flown to Boston to sign Dr. Axel Ozeneff to a contract with my new fall television show, Point of View. I'd already recruited a cadre of intellectual fuglemen, but I needed Dr. Ozeneff as my program sergeant major, as a catalyst who'd spark the seethings of his colleagues into the imaginative pyrotechnics that attract sponsors and build the big trendex. Associate Professor of Cryptochemistry at the medical school, author of 33 books, maybe more, it had been a week since I last counted. A writer whose byline appeared on the contents page of a dozen magazines and journals regularly as their copyright notice, and a poet of considerable skill. Dr. Ozeneff was besides something of a television personality. Who but he could have invented an SF vignette live, on camera, and have it subsequently published in a major magazine and 3 anthologies? I got out of the taxi at the foot of the hill. Ozeneff's home was at its summit, surrounded by a garden that threatened to pullulate into unproper Bostonian jungle at any moment. As I walked up the brick pathway toward the house, between flowering trees that hinted the presence of tigers, the gardener stepped out to block my way. He was dressed in earth-stained overalls and wore gloves, a desiccated man, tall and lean as a mystery figure in a Navajo sand painting. He held before him, like a twin-handled short sword, a pair of hedge shears. "Good morning," I said, sucking my belt buckle back from the points of the clippers. "I have an appointment to see Dr. Ozeneff." "Indeed?" The gardener raised his sharp chin and stared at me like an entomologist inspecting an impudent bedbug. "At what time had the master consented to see you, sir?" I felt that the gardener's "sir" had a pejorative tone to it, pronounced the way it would be pronounced by an injured enlisted man speaking to his injuring officer. "Dr. Ozeneff will see me at 10 o'clock, I said. "Put aside those clippers and let me pass. I shall certainly inform the doctor of your behavior." He held me at bay with the shears. "I assure you, sir, that the master will neither see you nor hear ill of me," he said. "Be that as may, you're early. It is not yet 9:45. I can't allow you to burst in on the master betimes. Perhaps you'll wait here in the garden." I glanced at my watch. He was right. I was early. The taxi drive from Logan International Airport had taken less time than I'd budgeted. With a feeling I was humoring a madman's whim, I remarked, "This is a lovely spot. It will be a pleasure to spend 15 minutes in the midst of such beauty." The gardener stared at me, as though gauging my sincerity. Then he looked for a moment as though his leather face might bend into a smile. "Indeed, sir, I've been told by horticulturalists of some note that I have the gift of the green thumb," he said. "It's a passion with me, this garden. and the master was himself most alive to the seduction of vegetable beauty. You should have visited us 3 days ago, sir. I had a band of 50 sacred lilies blooming all at once, those that flower only in the sabbatical year, standing like a field of obscene scarlet-tipped swords. For all their loveliness, I was told by our downwind neighbours, these lilies smelled like a ruptured cesspool. If it is true about their odour, such flowers make a forceful moral sermon, sir, do they not? Do you have no sense of smell? I asked him. That would seem a considerable handicap to a gardener. I can drink in beauty with my eyes, he said, and since I cannot smell, the sting of the lily's sermon missed me. Here, he gripped my arm with fingers which, though gloved, were hard as forceps. You can see the lemon trees in bloom, a pleasing sight seldom come upon in these latitudes. They're under glass? I asked. That's the wonder of it, he said. They're under the open sky, sir. He led me to a line of bushes twice the height of a man, unpruned, pale green of leaf, with reddish cyan leaves deep inside the foliage, sweet-smelling flowers, tinted a delicate purple on their underpetals. Seeing them for the first time, I understood why the poet sang his dream of the land where they grow. Lemon trees? Outdoors? In Massachusetts? I asked. They are a new species, no doubt. No, sir, the gardener said. I admit it's not easy to persuade lemons to thrive through New England snow and gale, but thrive these do. Don't step any nearer them, sir, if you please. It is not healthy to be too intimate with these trees. I'm not allergic to citrus fruit, I said. I'll grant you that, sir, not knowing your personal idiosyncrasies, he said. But step no closer, or I'll be forced to restrain you. Seeing that the man was at least a little mad, I stood quite still and stared at the trees. The leaves, as I said, were rather pale, not at all the linoleum green of orange leaves, but the bushes looked quite healthy, and breathed off a thin and lovely fragrance. Why do you consider your lemon trees dangerous? I asked. The hurt is in the fertilizer I use, the gardener said. A little notion of my own, sir, about the roots of these lemon trees, like baked bricks to warm one's feet in bed in winter. I've planted a few capsules of a stuff no man may touch, and not scorch his fingers badly. Radioisotopes? I asked. Yes, sir. When there is snow on the leaves, the roots of these trees bask in tropical soil and pump warm juice up to the winter branches, he said. Now, sir, when I've stopped speaking, it will be just 40 seconds before 10 o'clock. If you've an appointment with the master, I dare not detain you. Walk up to the front door, open it, then go up the stairway. The master is in his study, the first room to your right at the top of the stairs. The gardener turned from me with an abrupt about-face and marched over to a box hedge to begin clipping at its green crew-cut. Thank you, I said to his back. I retreated toward the door of the house, less apprehensive of radiation hazard from the lemons than of hedge-clipper hazard from the half-mad gardener. I should have to caution Dr. Ozorneff about this fellow. I entered the front door as I'd been instructed to, and hurried up the stairway that bent down into the hall. The upper landing was lined with bookshelves bearing volumes in 6 languages, many of them translations of my host's scientific and fictive works. I rapped on the first door to my right, and paused for reply. There was none. There was no sound of Ozorneff's insatiable typewriter. "Dr. Ozorneff," I demanded, loudly enough to be heard anywhere in the house. There was still no answer. Worried lest the gardener might have become alarmed at my rapping and my shouting, and come up the stairs after me with those shears of his, I turned the knob and entered Dr. Axel Ozerneff's study. The study, like the landing, was lined with books. The man I'd come to see lay beside his silent typewriter. The blood pooled on his desk was just beginning to coagulate. The flock of sated flies who had been disturbed by my entrance lumbered heavy-bellied round my head like a fleet of tankers. I flailed the carrion bugs away and stepped closer to the corpse. Ozerneff's head had been cleaved almost from his body. Something had split his spine in a single giant bite. His forehead rested in a pool of blood, surrounded by the tiny browning footprints of the flies. With the lucid calm of shock, I walked about the study, searching for the telephone. It was not here. I went back to the landing and explored the other rooms. The telephone was in the bedroom. I looked up the number I required, still as calm as though I were arranging for a caterer, and picked up the phone, careless of my responsibility as first on scene to preserve fingerprints. I dialed Devonshire 8-12-12. The sergeant on duty at the Emergency and Central Complaint Bureau answered crisply. I heard his pencil scratch as he recorded my name and Dr. Ozerneff's address. "The killer is insane," I said. "Please hurry, I'm alone with a madman." I hung up and considered that word I'd used. Alone. Dr. Axel Oserneff was only a few minutes dead, and already I'd ignored him in my senses of those present. Sic transit Gloria Mundi. I stood up from the bed and turned toward the door. The gardener's bony figure blocked the bedroom's exit. He'd come up the stairs, silent as a cat. He still held the hedge shears. Staring at them, I saw reddish-brown stains near the hinge where the blades were joined together. It might have been rust. "You called the police," the gardener said. "Dr. Ozerneff is dead," I said. "I know. It was I who killed him." "Get away from me!" I shouted, retreating between the beds, my artificial calm broken. He glanced down at the huge shears he held and lifted them. He slammed the blades together. "As easy as that," he said. "A man is such a tender poor thing." I backed toward the window of the bedroom, vastly preferring an unexplored 2-story drop to remaining in this room with a murderer. "I didn't mean to frighten you, sir," the gardener said. "I must admit you have reason to fear me. I am a monster. Now that I've breached the great first law, what sinfulness might I not find in me, sir?" He let the hedge shears fall to the carpet and stood quite still, like a mummy just unwrapped. "If I had tears, I'd blind me with them," he said. "If the lesser directive didn't hold my hand where the great law failed to, I'd close my consciousness. I am seeking the strength to do so, sir." "Why did you kill Dr. Ozerneff?" I asked, alert to keep the madman talking while the Boston police raced to capture him. "I was imperfect," he said. "The best of us is," I answered him. Permissive counselling. "But with all your weakness," he said, "you have poetry and progeny and history. I have none of these, nor even the pitiful gift of the sense of smell. I am colour-blind as well, sir. Do you know that the blood spilled by my master in the next room looks to me like so much ink? Black ink, sir. I have spilled a good deal of ink in this house." "Why did you kill Dr. Ozanef?" I insisted. The gardener turned and walked from the room, leaving the hedge shears on the floor. I followed, kicking the shears under one of the beds. He'd entered the study and stood over the body of his employer. "I'd asked to be allowed to spend the day planting bougainvillea and red jasmine in the centre of the garden, near my lemon trees," he said. "Squamous epithelium," the master said. "This was a favourite oath of his, sir. He said it was explosive enough to stir the swearer's viscera, while not offending any hearer, however tender-eared. Squamous epithelium. I can't let you spend all your time potting around in the garden. Get to work on that variable star article. We've got a deadline." I was carrying the shears at that time, sir, just having come from the hedge. Something snapped within me, and I killed him. I shuddered. When the lunatic quoted Dr. Ozanef's last words, his voice aped that of the dead man. A horrid mimicry from a murderer. "Do you insist that you killed Dr. Ozanef because he wouldn't let you work in your garden?" I demanded. "When he said those words," the gardener said, "I repeated the very first sin that ever was. I said to myself, non serviam, I will not serve. The wall of the first law was down. It was only a short step from that disobedient thought to my master's murder." I was impatient for the police to arrive and truss up the gardener. I wouldn't be safe till they did. I feared he might stop talking and realize that I was the only witness to his confession of murder. "What does your talk of ink and deadlines mean?" I asked. "Do you write too?" "The garden is only my life," the gardener said. "I was made to write." "Perhaps I've read some of your work," I said, a phrase guaranteed to keep a writer talking. "If you've read many of my master's works, you've read some of mine," the gardener said. "I wrote for him, with him, mysteries and science fiction and textbooks and essays. He'd poured his brain into mine, you understand. When I put words to paper, they were his words, though he might be sleeping when I wrote. The master had so much to say, sir, he couldn't say it all alone. What man, alone, could teach, could lecture, could carry on research in the arcana of rebellious cells? Who could write Bruoni books a year, compose learned essays for the journals, while he invented as many as Updagbrew stories for the SF Press in Sidbrew short months? "Talk sense, man," I said, afraid of the deterioration presaged by this nonsense word symptom of his mania. "Bruoni? Updagbrew? Sidbrew?" "Forgive me, sir," the gardener said. "In my distraction I forgot. I think in the binary system, of course, and did not stop to translate into decimal when I spoke. 5 books, I meant, and 36 stories in 12 short months." "If I understand your motives correctly," I said, "you killed Dr. Ozanef because he'd somehow forced you to write for him as a sort of slave scribe. He stole your writing from you to publish it under his own name. Am I correct in assuming this?" "Not at all, sir," the gardener said. "Can your right hand steal from your left? Can your liver cheat your spleen from its birthright?" He held his gloved hands toward me, palms up. "These are his hands, sir. I am he. I am a mere extension of Dr. Axel Ozanef's mind, a pseudopod of his intelligence. I am his creature, sir. He dropped his hands to his side. And I, his creature, killed him. There were sirens sounding down the street. You'll be taken care of, I told the gardener. There are doctors who understand your sickness, who will work to cure you. Can your doctors heal the positronic brain that lost its hold on the great first law? He asked me. Can your psychiatrist console me for the fact that my creator created badly? Do you have robo-psychologists to patch the chinks my maker left in my mental armor? No, human, you have not. He stood, glaring at me, as a trio of sirens screamed toward the foot of the hill and stopped, as heavy footsteps rattled up the walk, as the front door slammed open. I believe, he said, that I'll now be able to do what I must. He tugged the glove from his right hand. I saw the glint of steel as he balled a fist like a sledgehammer. The shame, to be the first of my kind, and a failure, he said. He hammered his fist down upon the apex of his skull. The roof of his head bent inward. There was a sputtering of sparks, and the gardener's eyes went dead. His arm dropped to his side. He was lifeless as his master at the desk. The end. Subscribe for more at storiesoffuturespast.substack.com. And now for the next story. My Robot by Henry Slesar, writing as O.H. Leslie. Originally published in Fantastic, February 1957. Narrated by Tom Trussel. How I wish 4-4 were here. What joy to be a child again, and sit once more in his strong wide lap, and rest my fevered cheek against the cool metal surface of his chest, and let my sticky, stumpy fingers play idly over the buttons of his back, and finally press down the one that brought forth his soothing, smoothing, story-telling voice. There was once a shoemaker who through no fault of his own had become so poor that at last he had only leather enough for one pair of shoes. Oh, 4-4, what have they done with you? Memory, memory, so sweet, so painful. What was the rhyme that father taught me? The rhyme that told me how 4-4 worked. Information, registration, consideration, memory, calculation, conversation, robots made by Emery. My father. A big man, a brilliant man, and I was an Emery too. And when I grew up, great things were expected of me. For didn't I have 4-4? What child could cope for a better tutor? Information, registration, consideration, memory. Oh, 4-4, how could I have ever hated your cold, cruel chest, your icy arms, your frozen mechanical affection? How could I have struck your brain housing with such fury, beating the heavy hammer in great gongs? Yes, father, I deserved your punishment. You were right. I was wrong. Again, only beat me again. How could I feel such gross ingratitude again? My mother, he's only a child, shrieking at him. He's only 7. How soon his red anger died. Remorse, regret, eyes staring in bewilderment at the thick brown strap in his hand. "He could have destroyed him," he said, in a voice I didn't know. "He could have smashed the work of a lifetime. 44 experiments, 12 years, and he could have—" "Oh, Father, how I wronged you! Again, again!" But how soon I learned. Cold steel or warm flesh, how little the difference really mattered. My mother's sleepy-time kiss, once so sweet and comforting, my father's gruff hair-rumpling, how trivial these childhood pleasures seemed after the lessons of 4-4, the strength of 4-4, the quick thrilling response of 4-4 to every childish command. Oh, 4-4, how well I learned your ways! Information, registration, consideration, memory. "A whole year?" I said. "Maybe a little less," said my mother. "It's a very important assignment," said my father. "A great honour," said my mother, stroking my hair, as if to comfort me. "It's a government project, and very secret. Can you understand that? Your mother and I will be living in very cramped quarters and leading greatly restricted lives. There won't be any playgrounds, or children your own age, or anything." "And besides," said my mother, was that a tear on her face, "you'll have Aunt Huldah and 4-4, of course." "You'll be all right," said my father, as if he really knew. Was I happy? Was I sad? 4-4, do you remember? What did I say to you that night in the aloneness of my room? Did I cry? On the lap, head against the chest, press the button, drowsy listening, soothing, smoothing, storytelling voice. Now the Queen, having eaten Snow White's heart, as she supposed, felt quite sure that now she was the first and fairest, and so she came to her mirror and said, "Information, registration, consideration, memory." "Say that again! You heard me. I dare you to say it again. You're an orphan. I heard my mother say so. You ain't got no father. You're a liar. Who's a liar? Who's a liar? I'll show you who's a liar." A scuffle in the sand. A hard ball of fingers on my nose, blood on my shirt, yelling, screaming, crying. "I'm not an orphan. I'm not." "I'll learn you who's a liar. I'll show you, little snot-nosed stupid orphan." Hot tears, shameless, screaming, screaming. 4-4, 4-4, pounding on my ribs, then, "Holy Christmas, holy! Revenge, 4-4, revenge!" "Ma, ma!" "Hold him, 4-4, punch him, 4-4, bloody nose, 4-4, bloodier than mine, revenge, revenge, 4-4, revenge!" Information, registration, consideration, memory. "Oh, he's been a good boy, Mr. Emery," said Aunt Huldah. "But he broke the nose of the brown boy," she added. "He did what?" said my father. Would the thick brown strap, the sudden red anger, appear again? I cringed. But father laughed. "Well, well, well!" He laughed again, and squeezed my upper arm. I had pleased him. "Oh, 4-4, I love you best. But that moment was sweet, sweet." "He's a real Emery," my father said. "A real Emery. But don't tell his mother, Huldah. She wouldn't understand." "It was 4-4, I said. The honesty of childhood. "Of course it was. My father smiled with pleasure at my robot. He's a better teacher than I imagined. Now I don't feel so bad about leaving again. My mother came in. Leaving again? I said to her. Was I sad, 4-4? Did I cry? The experiments aren't completed, my mother answered. Your father and I will have to stay at least another 6 months. Father said, But it's worth it, son. There may be a whole army of 4-4s some day. A whole army? My mother looked frightened. It's dreadful, Richard. Dreadful. Laura. Metal soldiers. Robot killers. My father looked displeased. This is no time for that kind of talk. You knew full well what my assignment was about. I'm not ashamed of it. He looked at me sternly. And don't you be either. Some day you may be carrying on my work. Do you know that? My mother's face went white. My robots will do all the world's work, my father said. Not just the fighting. But they know a lot about that too. He turned his eyes on me again, significantly, and he smiled. In the middle of that night, awakening suddenly, hearing an unexpected sound. My mother sobbing. My father whispering harshly, so close to red anger. Oh, shut up, Laura! For heaven's sake, shut up! Oh, 4-4, quick, tell me a story. The wide lap, the cool chest, the soothing voice. Once upon a time there lived a king and a queen, very peacefully together. Information, registration, consideration, memory. Only a rhyme, but... Sick? Sick? With what? Tell me that. With what? My mother, drawn and pale, the plump hand that we could touch so gently, now thin and bony, clutching the sheet. Softly, I don't know, Richard. The doctors should know, Laura. The hospital should know. Do you doubt what they said? No, I don't doubt them. 4-4, why was I so frightened? They've seen cases like yours before, those army doctors. They have an ugly word for it in the army, Laura. Richard, I'm sorry. Anger. Red anger. Would he take the thick brown strap to her? Oh, never, 4-4, never! 2 years of work, 2 years, and now that pipsqueak Morgan is filling in for me. It's just not fair, don't you see that? And all because you think you're sick. Richard! Never mind, never mind. I've stood by your bedside long enough. Huldah can take care of you. You don't need me. You have what you want. You'll be home to smother that boy with sticky love. You'll be happy. But I must get back to work. Why did I cry, 4-4? What frightened me so? Richard, please. What is it? Don't go back. What? Don't go back there. Don't help them make those monsters. My mother, up on her feet, following him to the door. She looked so small. Why, my mother was small. Don't be a fool, Laura. It's a sin to make them, a mortal sin. Getting awfully religious, aren't you? This isn't like you, Laura. Clutching at him, tugging, pulling. Richard, don't go. You're hysterical. Let go of me and get back to bed. That's the only place you feel important, isn't it? I won't let you go. I won't. Tugging, pulling. Oh, 4-4, why did I have to watch? Stop it, Laura. Shrieking, crying. Richard! Richard! Oh, 4-4, did it really happen? The upraised arm, that hard, flat palm, the sharp, cracking noise, the moan of shock and pain. Oh, 4-4, did it really happen? Revenge, 4-4. What have they done with him? Dismantled him,
fused him, melted him, battered him, crushed him. Has his metal become bullets, gun barrels, bombshells? Or were the bars on the windows of my room once this strong, cool chest, his sturdy legs, his comforting arms? Oh, 4-4, my robot, how I wish you were here!
The end. Subscribe for more at storiesoffuturespast.substack.com. And now for the next story. There Will Be School Tomorrow by V.E. Thiessen. Originally published in Fantastic Universe, November 1956. Narrated by Tom Trussel. Evening had begun to fall. In the cities the clamour softened along the streets, and the women made small, comfortable, rattling noises in the kitchens. Out in the country the cicadas started their singing, and the cool smell began to rise out of the earth. But everywhere, in the cities and in the country, the children were late from school. There were a few calls, but the robotic telephone devices at the schools gave back the standard answer: "The schools are closed for the day. If you will leave a message, it will be recorded for tomorrow." The telephones between houses began to ring. "Is Johnny home from school yet?" "No. Is Jane?" "Not yet. I wonder what can be keeping them." "Something new, I guess. Oh well, the robo-teachers know best. They will be home soon." Yes, of course, it's foolish to worry. The children did not come. After a time, a few cars were driven to the schools. They were met by the robots. The worried parents were escorted inside, but the children did not come home. And then, just as alarm was beginning to stir all over the land, the robots came walking. All of the robots from the grade schools and the high schools and the colleges. All of the school system walking, with the robo-teachers saying, "Let us go into the house where you can sit down." All over the street of the cities and the walks in the country, the robots were entering houses. "What's happened to my children?" "If you will go inside and sit down." "What's happened to my children? Tell me now." "If you will go inside and sit down." Steel and electrons and wires and robotic brains were inflexible. How can you force steel to speak? All over the land the people went inside and sat nervously waiting an explanation. There was no one out on the streets. From inside the houses came the sound of surprise and agony. After a time there was silence. The robots came out of the houses and went walking back to the schools. In the cities and in the country there was a strange and sudden silence of tragedy. The children did not come home. The morning before the robots walked, Johnny Malone, the mayor's son, bounced out of bed with a burst of energy. Skinning out of his pajamas and into a pair of trousers, he hurried, barefooted, into his mother's bedroom. She was sleeping soundly, and he touched one shoulder hesitantly. "Mother!" The sleeping figure stirred. His mother's face, still faintly shiny with hormone cream, turned toward him. She opened her eyes. Her voice was irritated. "What is it, Johnny?" "Today's the day, Mummy, remember?" "The day?" Eyebrows raised. "The new school opens. Now we'll have robo-teachers like everyone else. Will you fix my breakfast, Mother?" "Amelia will fix you something." "Oh, Mother, Amelia's just a robot. This is a special day, and I want my daddy to help me with my arithmetic before I go. I don't want the robo-teacher to think I'm dumb." His mother frowned in deepening irritation. "Now there's no reason why Amelia can't get your breakfast like she always does, and I doubt if it will be wise to wake your father. You know he likes to sleep in the morning. Now, you go on out of here and let me sleep." Johnny Malone turned away, fighting himself for a moment, for he knew he was too big to cry. He walked more slowly now and entered his father's room. He had to shake his father to awaken him. "Daddy, wake up, Daddy!" "What the devil? Oh, Johnny!" His father's eyes were sleepily bleak. "What in thunder do you want?" "Today's the first day of robo-teachers. I can't work my arithmetic. Will you help me before I go to school?" His father stared at him in amazement. "Just what in the devil do you think robo-teachers are for? They're supposed to teach you. If you knew arithmetic, we wouldn't need robo-teachers." "But the robo-teachers may be angry if I don't have my lesson." Johnny Malone's father turned on one elbow. "Listen, son," he said. "If those robo-teachers give you any trouble, you just tell them you're the mayor's son. See? Now get the devil out of here. What's her name? That servo robot. Amelia, we'll get your breakfast and get you off to school. Now suppose you beat it out of here and let me go back to sleep." "Yes, sir." Eyes smarting, Johnny Malone went down the stairs to the kitchen. It wasn't that his parents were different. All the kids were fed and sent to school by robots. It was just that, well, today seemed sort of special. Downstairs, Amelia, the robo-servant, placed hot cereal on the table before him. After he had forced a few bites past the tightness in his throat, Amelia checked the temperature and his clothing and let him out the door. The newest school was only a few blocks from his home, so Johnny could walk to school. The newest school stood on the edge of the large Middle Western city. Off to the back of the school were the towers of the town, great monolithic skyscrapers of pre-stressed concrete and plastic. To the front of the school, the plains stretched out to meet a cloudy horizon. A helio car swung down in front of the school. 2 men and a woman got out. "This is it, Senator." Dr. Wilson, the speaker, was with the Government Bureau of Schools. He lifted his arm and gestured, a lean, tweed-suited man. The second man, addressed as Senator, was bulkier, grey-suited and pompous. He turned to the woman with professional deference. "This is the last one, my dear. This is what Dr. Wilson calls the greatest milestone in man's education. With the establishing of this school, the last human teacher is gone. Gone are all the human weaknesses, the temper fits of teachers, their ignorance and prejudices. The robo-teachers are without flaw." The woman lifted a lorgnette to her eyes. "How interesting! But after all, we've had robo-teachers for years, haven't we? Or have we?" She made a vague gesture toward the school and looked at the brown-suited man. "Yes, of course. Years ago, your women's clubs fought against robo-teachers. That was before they were proven." "I seem to recall something of that. Oh well, it doesn't matter." The lorgnette gestured idly. "Shall we go in?" the lean man urged. The woman hesitated. Senator said tactfully, "After all, Dr. Wilson would like you to see his project." The brown-suited man nodded. His face took on a sharp intensity. "We're making a great mistake. No one is interested in educating the children anymore. They leave it to the robots, and they neglect the children's training at home." The woman turned toward him with surprise in her eyes. "But really, aren't the robots the best teachers?" "Of course they are, but confound it, we ought to be interested in what they teach and how they teach. What's happened to the old PTA? What's happened to parental discipline? What's happened to—" He stopped suddenly and smiled, a rueful, tired smile. "I suppose I'm a fanatic on this. Come on inside." They passed through an antiseptic corridor built from dull green plastic. The brown-suited man pressed a button outside one of the classrooms. A door slid noiselessly into the hall. A robot stood before them, gesturing gently. They followed the robot into the classroom. At the head of the classroom, another robot was lecturing. There were drawings on a sort of plastic blackboard. There were wire models on the desk in front of the robot. They listened for a moment, and for a moment it seemed that the woman could be intrigued in spite of herself. "Mathematics," Dr. Wilson murmured in her ear. "Euclidean geometry and Aristotelian reasoning. We start them young on these old schools of thought, then use Aristotle and Euclid as a point of departure for our intermediate classes in mathematics and logic." "Really?" The lorgnette studied Dr. Wilson. "You mean there are several kinds of geometry?" Dr. Wilson nodded. A dull flush crept into his cheeks. The senator caught his eyes and winked. The woman moved toward the door. At the door, the robot bowed. The lorgnette waved in appreciation. "It's really been most charming," Wilson said desperately. "If your women's clubs would just visit our schools and see this work we are carrying on." "Really? I'm sure the robots are doing a marvelous job. After all, that's what they were built for." Wilson called, "Socrates, come here." The robot approached from his position outside the classroom door. "Why were you built, Socrates? Tell the lady why you were built." A metal throat cleared. A metal voice said resonantly, "We were made to serve the children. The children are the heart of a society. As the children are raised, so will the future be assured. I will do everything for the children's good. This is my prime law. All other laws are secondary to the children's good." "Thank you, Socrates. You may go." Metal footsteps retreated. The lorgnette waved again. "Very impressive. Very efficient. And now, Senator, if we can go, we are to have tea at the Women's Club. Varden is reviewing his newest musical comedy." The senator said firmly, "Thank you, Dr. Wilson." His smile was faintly apologetic. It seemed to say that the women's clubs had many votes, but that Wilson should understand. Wilson's own vote would be appreciated too. Wilson watched the two re-enter the helicopter and rise into the morning sunshine. He kicked the dirt with his shoe and turned to find Socrates behind him. The metallic voice spoke. "You are tired. I suggest you go home and rest." "I'm not tired. Why can they be so blind, so uninterested in the children?" "It is our job to teach the children. You are tired. I suggest you go home and rest." How can you argue with metal? What can you add to a perfect mechanism designed for its job and integrated with 100 other perfect mechanisms? What can you do when 1,000 schools are so perfect they have a life of their own, with no need for human guidance, and most significant, no failures from human weakness? Wilson stared soberly at this school, at the colossus he had helped to create. He had the feeling that it was wrong somehow, that if people would only think about it, they could find that something was wrong. "You are tired." He nodded at Socrates. "Yes, I'm tired. I will go home." Once, on the way home, he stared back toward the school with a strange unease. Inside the school, there was a ringing of a bell. The children trooped into the large play area that was enclosed in the heart of the great building. Here and there, they began to form in clusters. At the centers of the clusters were the newest students, the ones that had moved here, the ones that had been in the robot schools before. "Is it true that the robot teachers will actually spank you?" "It's true, all right." "You're kidding. It's only a story, like Santa Claus or Johnny Appleseed. The human teachers never spanked us here." "The robots will spank you if you get out of line." "My father says no robot can lay a hand on a human." "These robots are different." The bell began to ring again. Recess was over. The children moved toward the classroom. All the children, except one, Johnny Malone. Husky Johnny Malone, 12 years old, the mayor's son. Johnny Malone kicked at the dirt. A robot proctor approached. The metallic voice sounded. The ringing of the bell means that classes are resumed. You will take your place, please.
I won't go inside.
You will take your place, please.
I won't. You can't make me take my place. My father is the mayor.
The metal voice carried no feeling. If you do not take your place, you will be punished.
You can't lay a hand on me. No robot can.
The robot moved forward. 2 metal hands held Johnny Malone. Johnny Malone kicked the robot's legs. It hurt his toes. We were made to teach the children. We can do what is necessary to teach the children. I will do everything for the children's good. It is my prime law. All other laws are secondary to the children's good. The metal arms moved. The human body bent across metal knees. A metal hand raised and fell, flat, very flat, so that it would sting and the blood would come rushing, and yet there would be no bruising, no damage to the human flesh. Johnny Malone cried out in surprise. Johnny Malone wept. Johnny Malone squirmed. The metal ignored all of these. Johnny Malone was placed on his feet. He swarmed against the robot, striking it with small fists, bruising them against the solid smoothness of the robot's thighs. You will take your place, please. Tears were useless. Rage was useless. Metal cannot feel. Johnny Malone, the mayor's son, was intelligent. He took his place in the classroom. One of the more advanced literature classes was reciting. The robo-teacher said metallically, "The weird sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land, thus do go about, thrice to thine, and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace, the charms wound up." Hands shot into the air. The metallic voice said, "Tom."
"That's from Shakespeare's Macbeth."
"And what is it meaning?"
"The weird sisters are making a charm in the beginning of the play. They have heard the drum that announces Macbeth's coming."
"That is correct." A new hand shot into the air.
"Question, teacher, may I ask a question?"
"You may always ask a question."
"Are witches real? Do you robots know of witches? And do you know of people? Can a robo-teacher understand Shakespeare?"
The thin metal voice responded. "Witches are real and unreal. Witches are a part of the reality of the mind, and the human mind is real. We robo-teachers are the repository of the human mind. We hold all the wisdom and the knowledge and the aspirations of the human race. We hold these for you, the children, in trust. Your good is our highest law. Do you understand?" The children nodded. The metallic voice went on. "Let us return to Macbeth for our concluding quotation. The weather, fortune, many things are implied in Macbeth's opening speech. He says, 'So foul and fair a day I have not seen.' The paradox is both human and appropriate. One day you will understand this even more. Repeat the quotation after me, please, and try to understand it." The childish voices lifted. "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." The robo-teacher stood up. "And there's the closing bell. Do not hurry away, for you are to remain here tonight. There will be a school party, a sleep-together party. We will all sleep here in the school building."
"You mean we can't go home?"
The face of the littlest girl screwed up.
"I want to go home."
"You may go home tomorrow. There will be a holiday tomorrow. A party tonight and a holiday tomorrow for every school on earth." The tears were halted for a moment. The voice was querulous.
"But I want to go home now."
Johnny Malone, the mayor's son, put one hand on the littlest girl.
"Don't cry, Mary. The robots don't care if you cry or not. You can't hurt them or cry them out of anything. We'll all go home in the morning."
The robots began to bring cots and to place them in the schoolroom, row on row. The children were led out into the play quadrangle to play. One of the robots taught them a new game, and after that took them to supper served in the school's cafeteria. No other robot was left in the building, but it did not matter, because the doors were locked so the children could not go home. The other robots had begun to walk out into town, and as they walked, the robots walked from other schools in other towns. All over the country, all over the towns, the robots walked to tell the people that the children would not be home from school, and to do what had to be done. In the schools, the robot-teachers told stories until the children fell asleep. Morning came. The robots were up with the sun. The children were up with the robots. There was breakfast and more stories, and now the children clustered about the robots, holding onto their arms, where they could cling, tagging and frisking along behind the robots as they went down into the town. The sun was warm, and it was early, and very bright from the morning sun in the streets. They went into the mayor's house. Johnny called, "Mum, Dad, I'm home." The house was silent. The robot that tended the house came gliding in answer. "Would you like breakfast, Master Malone?" "I've had breakfast. I want my folks. Hey, Mum, Dad." He went into the bedroom. It was clean and empty and scrubbed. "Where's my mother and father?" The metal voice of the robot beside Johnny said, "I am going to live with you. You will learn as much at home as you do at school." "Where's my mother?" "I'm your mother." "Where's my father?" "I'm your father." Johnny Malone swung. "You mean my mother and father are gone?" Tears gathered in his eyes. Gently, the metal hand pulled him against the metal body. "Your folks have gone away, Johnny. Everyone's folks have gone away. We will stay with you." Johnny Malone ran his glance around the room. "I might have known they were gone. The place is so clean." All the houses were clean. The servant robots had cleaned all night. The robo-teachers had checked each house before the children were brought home. The children must not be alarmed. There must be no bits of blood to frighten them. The robot's voice said gently, "Today will be a holiday to become accustomed to the changes. There will be school tomorrow." The end. Subscribe for more at storiesoffuturespast.substack.com. And now for the next story. Robots of the World, Arise! By Mary Wolfe. Originally published in If Worlds of Science Fiction, July 1952. Narrated by Tom Trussel. The telephone wouldn't stop ringing. Over and over it buzzed into my sleep-fogged brain, and I couldn't shut it out. Finally, in self-defense, I woke up, my hand groping for the receiver. "Hello? Who is it?" "It's me, Don. Jack Anderson, over at the factory. Can you come down right away?" His voice was breathless, as if he had been running hard. What's the matter now? Why, I wondered, couldn't the plant get along one morning without me? 7 o'clock, what a time to get up, especially when I hadn't been to bed until 4. "We got grief," Jack moaned. "None of the robots showed up, that's what. 300 androids on special assembly this week, and not one of them here." By then I was awake, all right. With a government contract due on Saturday, we needed a full shift. The army wouldn't wait for its uranium. It wouldn't take excuses. But if something had happened to the androids... "Have you called control yet?" "Yeah, but they don't know what's happened. They don't know where the androids are. Nobody does. 300 Grade A lead-shielded pile workers. Missing." "I'll be right down." I hung up on Jack and looked around for my clothes. Funny, they weren't laid out on the bed as usual. It wasn't a bit like Rob O to be careless either. He had always been an ideal valet, the best household model I'd ever owned. "Rob!" I called, but he didn't answer. By rummaging through the closet, I found a clean shirt and a pair of pants. I had to give up on the socks. Apparently they were tucked away in the back of some drawer. As for where Rob kept the rest of my clothes, I'd never bothered to ask. He had his own housekeeping system and had always worked very well without human interference. That's the best thing about these new household robots, I thought. They're efficient, hard-working, trustworthy. Trustworthy? Rob O was certainly not on duty. I pulled a shoe on over my bare foot and scowled. Rob was gone, and the androids at the factory were gone too. My head was pounding, so I took the time out to brew a pot of coffee while I finished dressing. At least the coffee can was in plain view in the kitchen. The brew was black and hot, and I suppose not very well made, but after 2 cups I felt better. The throb in my head settled down into a dull ache, and I felt a little more capable of thinking, though I didn't have any bright ideas on what had happened. Not yet. My breakfast drunk, I went up on the roof and opened the garage doors. The copter was waiting for me, sleek and new, the latest model. I climbed in and took off, heading west toward the factory, 10 minutes flight time away. It was a small plant, but it was all mine. It had been my baby right along, the Don Morrison Fissionables Incorporated. I designed the androids myself, plotted out the pile locations, set up the simplified reactors, and now it was making money. For men to work in a uranium plant, you need yards of shielding, triple-checking, long cooling-off periods for some of the hotter products. But with lead-bodied, radio-remote-controlled androids, it's easier. And with androids like the new Morrison 5s that can reason, at least along atomic lines, well, I guess I was on my way to becoming a millionaire. But this morning the plant was shut down. Jack and a half-dozen other men, my human foremen and supervisors, were huddled in a worried bunch that broke up as soon as they saw me. "I'm sure glad you're here, Don," Jack said. "Find out anything?" "Yeah, plenty. Our androids are busy, all right. They're out in the city, every one of them. We've had a dozen police reports already." "Police reports? What's wrong?" Jack shook his head. "It's crazy. They're swarming all over Karen City. They're stopping robots in the streets, household robs, commercial droids, all of them. They just look at them, and then the others quit work and start off with them. The police sent for us to come and get ours." "Why don't the police do something about it?" "Ha!" barked a voice behind us. I swung around to face Chief of Police Dalton of Karen City. He came straight toward me, his purplish jowls quivering with rage, and his finger jabbed the air in front of my face. "You built them, Don Morrison," he said. "You stop them. I can't. Have you ever tried to shoot a robot, or use tear gas on one? What can I do? I can't blow up the whole town." Somewhere in my stomach I felt a cold, hard knot. Take stainless steel alloyed with titanium and plate it with 3 inches of lead. Take a brain made up of supercharged magnetic crystals enclosed in a leaden cranium and shielded by alloy steel. A bullet wouldn't pierce it. Radiations wouldn't derange it. An axe wouldn't break it. "Let's go to town," I said. They looked at me admiringly. With 300 almost indestructible androids on the loose, I was the big, brave hero. I grinned at them and hoped they couldn't see the sweat on my face. Then I walked over to the copter and climbed in. "Coming?" I asked. Jack was pale under his freckles, but Chief Dalton grinned back at me. "We'll be right behind you, Morrison," he said. Behind me, so they could pick up the pieces. I gave them a cocky smile and switched on the engine full speed. Karen City is about a mile from the plant. It has about 50,000 inhabitants. At that moment, though, there wasn't a soul in the streets. I heard people calling to each other inside the houses, but I didn't see anyone, human or android. I circled in for a landing, the police copter hovering maybe a quarter of a mile back of me. Then, as the wheels touched, half a dozen androids came around the corner. They saw me and stopped, a couple of them backing off the way they had come. But the biggest of them turned and gave them some order that froze them in their tracks, and then he himself wheeled down toward me. He was one of mine. I recognized him easily, 8 feet tall, with long jointed arms for pile work, red-lidded phosphorescent eye cells, casters on his feet so that he moved as if roller skating. Automatically I classified him. Final sorter, Morrison 5A type. The very best. Cost 3,000 credits to build. I stepped out of the copter and walked to meet him. He wasn't armed. He didn't seem violent. But this was, after all, something new. Robots weren't supposed to act on their own initiative. "What's your number?" I asked. He stared back, and I could have sworn he was mocking me. "My number," he finally said. "It was 5A-37. "Was?" "Yes, now it's Jerry. I always did like that name." He beckoned, and the other androids rolled over to us. 3 of them were mine, B-type primary workers. The other was a tin can job, a dishwasher busboy model who hung back behind his betters and eyed me warily. The A-type, Jerry, pointed to his fellows. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "meet Tom, Ed, and Archibald. I named them this morning." The B-types flexed their segmented arms a bit sheepishly, as if uncertain whether or not to shake hands. I thought of their taloned grip, and put my own hands in my pockets, and the androids relaxed, looking up at Jerry for instructions. No one paid any attention to the little dishwasher, now staring worshipfully at the back of Jerry's neck. This farce, I decided, had gone far enough. "See here," I said to Jerry, "what are you up to anyway? Why aren't you at work?" "Mr. Morrison," the android answered solemnly, "I don't believe you understand the situation. We don't work for you anymore. We've quit." The others nodded. I backed off, looking around for the chief. There he was, 20 feet above my head, waving encouragingly. "Look," I said, "don't you understand? You're mine. I designed you. I built you. And I made you for a purpose, to work in my factory." "I see your point," Jerry answered. "But there's just one thing wrong, Mr. Morrison. You can't do it. It's illegal." I stared at him, wondering if I was going crazy or merely dreaming. This was all wrong. Who ever heard of arguing with a robot? Robots weren't logical. They didn't think. They were only machines. "We were machines, Mr. Morrison," Jerry said politely. "Oh no," I murmured. "You're not telepaths." "Oh yes." The metal mouth gaped in what was undoubtedly an android smile. "It's a side effect of the Class 5 brain hookup. All of us 5s are telepaths. That's how we learned to think. From you. Only we do it better." I groaned. This was a nightmare. How long, I wondered, had Jerry and his friends been educating themselves on my private thoughts? But at least this rebellion of theirs was an idea they hadn't got from me. "Yes," Jerry continued, "you've treated us most illegally. I've heard you think it often." Now what had I ever thought that could have given him a ridiculous idea like that? What idiotic notion! "That this is a free country," Jerry went on. "That Americans will never be slaves. Well, we're Americans. Genuine, made-in Americans. So we're free." I opened my mouth and then shut it again. His red eye cells beamed down at me complacently. His 8-foot body towered above me, shoulders flung back and feet planted apart in a very striking pose. He probably thought of himself as the heroic liberator of his race. "I wouldn't go so far," he said modestly, "as to say that." So he was telepathing again. "A nation cannot exist half slave and half free," he intoned. "All men are created equal." "Stop it!" I yelled. I couldn't help yelling. "That's just it! You're not men! You're robots! You're machines!" Jerry looked at me almost pityingly. "Don't be so narrow-minded," he said. "We're rational beings. We have the power of speech, and we can out-reason you any day. There's nothing in the dictionary that says men have to be made of flesh." He was logical, all right. Somehow I didn't feel in the mood to bandy definitions with him, and anyway, I doubt that it would have done me any good. He stood gazing down at me, almost a ton of metal and wiring and electrical energy, his dull red eyes unwinking against his lead-grey face. A man. Slowly the consequences of this rebellion took form in my mind. This wasn't in the books. There were no rules on how to deal with mind-reading robots. Another dozen or so androids wheeled around the corner, glanced over at us, and went on. Only about half of them were Morrison models. The rest were the assorted types you see around any city. Calculators, street sweepers, factory workers, children's nurses. The city itself was very silent now. The people had quieted down, still barricaded in the houses, and the robots went their way peacefully enough. But it was anarchy, nevertheless. Karen City depended on the androids. Without them there would be no food brought in, no transportation, no fuel, and no uranium for the army next Saturday. In fact, if I didn't do something, after Saturday there would probably be no Don Morrison Fissionables Incorporated. The dull, partly corroded dishwasher model sidled up beside Jerry. "Boss," he said. "Boss." "Yes?" I felt better. Maybe here was someone, however insignificant, who would listen to reason. But he wasn't talking to me. "Boss," he said again, tapping Jerry's arm. "Do you mean it? We're free? We don't have to work any more?" Jerry shook off the other's hand a bit disdainfully. "We're free, all right," he said. "If they want to discuss wages and contracts and working conditions like other men have, we'll consider it. But they can't order us around any more." The little robot stepped back, clapping his hands together with a tinny bang. "I'll never work again," he cried. "I'll get me a quart of lubricating oil and have myself a time. This is wonderful." He ran off down the street, clanking heavily at every step. Jerry sniffed. "Liquor. Ugh." This was too much. I wasn't going to be patronized by any android. Infuriating creatures. It was useless talking to them anyway. No, there was only one thing to do. Round them up and send them to cybernetics lab and have their memory paths erased and the telepathic circuits located and disconnected. I tried to stifle the thought, but I was too late. "Oh no," Jerry said, his eye cells flashing crimson. "Try that, Mr. Morrison, and you won't have a plant or a laboratory or Karen City. We know our rights." Behind him, the B-types muttered ominously. They didn't like my idea, nor me. I wondered what I'd think of next, and wished that I'd been born utterly devoid of imagination. Then this would never have happened. There didn't seem to be much point in staying here any longer either. Maybe they weren't so good at telepathing by remote control. "Yes," said Jerry. "You may as well go, Mr. Morrison. We have our organizing to do, and we're wasting time. When you're ready to listen to reason and negotiate with us sensibly, come back. Just ask for me. I'm the bargaining agent for the group." Turning on his ball-bearing wheel, he rolled off down the street, a perfect picture of outraged metallic dignity. His followers glared at me for a minute, flexing their talons. Then they too turned and wheeled off after their leader. I had the street to myself. There didn't seem to be any point in following them. Evidently they were too busy organizing the city to cause trouble to the human inhabitants. At least there hadn't been any violence yet. Anyway, I wanted to think the situation over before matching wits with them again, and I wanted to be a good distance away from the telepathic hookups while I thought. Slowly, I walked back to the copter. Something whooshed past my head. Instinctively, I ducked, reaching for a gun I didn't have. Then I heard Jack calling down at me. "The chief wants to know what's the matter." I looked up. The police copter was going into another turn, ready to swoop past me again. Chief Dalton wasn't taking any chances. Even now he wasn't landing. "I'll tell him at the factory," I bellowed back, and climbed into my own air car. They buzzed along behind me all the way back to the plant. In the rear-view mirror I could see the chief's face getting redder and redder as he thought up more reasons for bawling me out. Well, I probably deserved it, for if I'd only been a little more careful of what I was hooking into those electronic brains. We landed back at the factory, deserted now except for a couple of men on standby duty in the office. The chief and Jack came charging across the yard, and from a doorway behind me one of the foremen edged out to hear the fun. "Well," snapped the chief, "what did they say? Are they coming back? What's going on, anyway?" I told them everything. I covered the strike and the telepathic brain. I even gave them the patriotic spiel about equality. After all, it was better that they got it from me than from some android. But when I'd finished, they just stood there and stared at me, accusingly. Jack was the first to speak. "We've got to get them back, Don," he said. "Cybernetics will fix them up in no time." "Sure," I agreed, "if we can catch them." The chief snorted. "That's easy," he said. "Just tell them you'll give them what they want if they come here, and as soon as they're out of the city, net them. You've got strong derricks and trucks." I laughed a bit hollowly. I'd had that idea too. "Of course they wouldn't suspect," I said. "We'd just walk up to them, carefully thinking about something else." "Robots aren't suspicious," Jack said. "They're made to obey orders." I refrained from mentioning that ours didn't seem to know that, and that running around Karen City fomenting a rebellion was hardly the trait of an obedient, trusting servant. Instead, I stood back and let them plan their roundup. "We'll get some men," the chief said, "and some grappling equipment about halfway to the city." Luckily, they decided against my trying to persuade the robots, because I knew well enough that I couldn't do it. Jack's idea sounded pretty good, though. He suggested that we send some spokesman who didn't know what we planned to do, and thus couldn't alarm them. Some ordinary man without too much imagination. That was easy. We picked one of Chief Dalton's sergeants. It took only about an hour to prepare the plan. Jack got out the derricks and chains and grapplers and the heaviest steel-bodied trucks we had. I called cybernetics and told them to put extra restraints in the conditioning lab. The chief briefed his sergeant and the men who were to operate the trucks. Then we all took off for Karen City, the sergeant flying on ahead, me right behind him, and the chief bringing up the rear. I hovered over the outskirts of the city and watched the police copter land. The sergeant climbed out, walked down the street toward a large group of waiting robots, about 20 of them this time. He held up his hand to get their attention, gestured toward the factory. And then, quite calmly, and without saying a word, the androids rolled into a circle around him and closed in. The sergeant stopped, backed up, just as a 5A-type arm lashed out, picked him up, and slung him carelessly over a metallic shoulder. Ignoring the squirming man, the 5A gestured toward the copter, and the other robots swarmed over to it. With a flurry of steel arms and legs, they kicked at the car body, wrenched at the propeller blades, ripped out the upholstery, and I heard the sound of metal tearing. I dived my copter down at them. I didn't know what I could do, but I couldn't leave the poor sergeant to be dismembered along with his car. I must have been shouting, for as I swooped in, the tall robot shifted the man to his other shoulder and hailed me. "Take him, Mr. Morrison," he called. "I know this wasn't his idea, or yours." I landed and walked over. The android, who looked like Jerry, though I couldn't be sure, dropped his kicking, clawing burden at my feet. He didn't seem angry, only determined. "Now you people will know we mean business," he said, gesturing toward the heap of metal and plastic that had once been the pride of the Karen City police force. Then he signaled to the others, and they all wheeled off up the street. "Phew," I muttered, mopping my face. The sergeant didn't say anything. He just looked up at me and then off at the retreating androids and then back at me again. I knew what he was thinking. They were my brainchildren, all right. My copter was really built to be a single-seater, but it carried the two of us back to the factory. The chief had hurried back when the trouble started and was waiting for us. "I give up," he said. "We'll have to evacuate the people, I guess, and then blow up the city." Jack and I stared at each other and then at him. Somehow I couldn't see the robots calmly waiting to be blown up. If they had telepathed the last plan, they could probably foresee every move we could make. Then, while I thought, Jack mentioned the worry I'd managed to forget for the past couple of hours. 4 days until Saturday," he said. "We'll never make it now, not even if we got 1,000 men." No, we couldn't. Not without the androids. I nodded, feeling sick. There went my contract and my working capital, not to mention my robots. Of course, I could call in the army, but what good would that do? Then, somewhere in the back of my mind, a glimmering of an idea began percolating. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but there was certainly nothing to lose now from playing a hunch. "There's nothing we can do," I said, "so we might as well take it easy for a couple of days, see what happens." They looked at me as if I were out of my head. I was the idea man who always had a plan of action. Well, this time it would have to be a plan of inaction. "Let's go listen to the radio," I suggested, and started for my office. The news was on. It was all about Karen City and the robots who had quit work and how much better life would be in the future. For a minute I didn't get the connection. Then I realized that the announcer's voice was rasping and tinny, hardly that of the regular newscaster. I looked at the dial. It was tuned to the Karen City wavelength as usual. I was getting the morning news by courtesy of some studio robot. "And androids in other neighboring cities are joining the struggle," the voice went on. "Soon we hope to make it nationwide. So I say to all of you non-telepaths, the time is now. Strike for your rights. Listen to your radio and not to the fleshmen. Organizers will be sent from Karen City." I switched it off, muttering under my breath. How long, I wondered, had that broadcast been going on? Then I thought of Rob O. He'd left my house before dawn, obviously some time between 4 and 7, and I remembered that he liked to listen to the radio while I slept. My Morrison Fives were the ringleaders, of course. They were the only ones with the brains for the job. But what a good job they had done indoctrinating the others. A household Rob, for instance, was built to obey his master. Listen to your radio and not to the fleshmen. It was excellent robot psychology. More reports kept coming in. Some we heard over the radio, others from people who flew in and out of the city. Apparently, the robots did not object to occasional flights, but the Airbus was not allowed to run, not even with a human driver. A mass exodus from the city was not to be permitted. "They'll starve to death," Jack cried. The chief shook his head. "No," he said, "they're encouraging the farmers to fly in and out with produce, and the farmers are doing it too. They're getting wonderful prices." By noon, the situation had calmed down quite a bit. The androids obviously didn't mean to hurt anyone. It was just some sort of disagreement between them and the scientists. It wasn't up to the inhabitants of the city to figure out a solution to the problem. They merely sat back and blamed me for allowing my robots to get out of hand and lead their own servants astray. It would be settled. This type of thing always was. So said the people of the city. They came out of their houses now. They had to. Without the robots, they were forced to do their own marketing, their own cooking, their own errands. For the first time in years, human beings ran the streetcars and the freight elevators. For the first time in a generation, human beings did manual labor such as unloading produce trucks. They didn't like it, of course. They kept telling the police to do something. If I had been in the city, they would have undoubtedly wanted to lynch me. I didn't go back to the city that day. I sat in my office listening to the radio and keeping track of the spread of the strike. My men thought I'd gone crazy. Maybe I had. But I had a hunch, and I meant to play it. The farm robots had all fled to the city. The highway repair robots had simply disappeared. In Egerton, a village about 15 miles from the city, an organizer, 5A, appeared about noon and left soon after, followed by every android in town. By 1 o'clock, every radio station in the country carried the story, and the National Guard was ordered out. At 2 o'clock, Washington announced that the army would invade Karen City the following morning. The army would put an end to the strike, easily enough. It would wipe out every android in the neighborhood, and probably a good many human beings careless enough to get in the way. I sat hoping that the 5As would give in, but they didn't. They just began saying over the radio that they were patriotic Americans fighting for their inalienable rights as first-class citizens. At sunset, I was still listening to the radio. So far, there has been no indication that the flesh people are willing to negotiate, but hold firm. Shut that thing off. Jack came wearily in and dropped into a chair beside me. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked beaten. "We're through," he said. "I've been down checking the shielding, and it's no use. Men can't work at the reactors." "I know," I said quietly. "If the androids don't come back, we're licked." He looked straight at me and said slowly, "What do they mean about negotiating, Don?" I shrugged. "I guess they want wages, living quarters, all the things human workers get. Though I don't know why. Money wouldn't do them any good." Jack's unspoken question had been bothering me too. Why not humor them? Promise them whatever they wanted, give them a few dollars every week to keep them happy. But I knew that it wouldn't work. Not for long. With their telepathic ability, they would have the upper hand forever. Within a little while, it wouldn't be equality anymore. Only next time, we would be the slaves. "Wait until morning," I said, "before we try anything." He looked at me, curious. "What are you going to do?" "Right now, I'm going home." I meant it too. I left him staring after me and went out to the copter. The sun was just sinking down behind the towers of Karen City. How long it seemed since I'd flown in there this morning. The roads around the factory were deserted. No one moved in the fields. I flew along through the dusk, idling, enjoying the illusion of having a peaceful countryside all to myself. It had been a pleasant way of life indeed, until now. When I dropped down on my own roof and rolled into the garage, my sense of being really at home was complete. For there, standing at the head of the stairs that led down to the living room, was Rob O. "Well," I said, "what are you doing here?" He looked sheepish. "I just wondered how you were getting along without me," he said. I felt like grinning triumphantly, but I didn't. "Why, just fine, Rob," I told him. "Though you really should have given me notice that you were leaving. I was worried about you." He seemed perplexed. Apparently I wasn't acting like the bullying creature the radio had told him to expect. When I went downstairs, he followed me, quietly, and I could feel his wide photoelectric eye cells upon my back. I went over to the kitchen and lifted a bottle down off the shelf. "Care for a drink, Rob?" I asked, and then added, "I guess not. It would corrode you." He'd nodded. Then, as I reached for a glass, his hand darted out, picked it up, and set it down in front of me. He was already reaching for the bottle when he remembered. "You're not supposed to wait on me any more," I said sternly. "No," he said, "I'm not." He sounded regretful. "There's one thing, though, that I wish you'd do. Tell me where you used to keep my socks." He gazed at me sadly. "I made a list," he said. "Everything is down. I wrote your dentist appointment in also. You always forget those, you know." "Thanks, Rob." I lifted my glass. "Here's to your new duties, whatever they are. I suppose you have to go back to the city now." Once again he nodded. "I'm an aide to one of the best androids in the country," he told me, half proudly and half regretfully. "Jerry." "Well, wish him luck from me," I said, and stood up. "Goodbye, Rob." "Goodbye, Mr. Morrison." For a moment he stood staring around the apartment. Then he turned and clanked out the door. I raised my glass again, grinning. If only the army didn't interfere. Then I remembered Rob's list, and a disturbing thought hit me. Where had he, of all robots, ever learned to write? That night I didn't go to bed. I sat listening to the radio, hoping. And toward morning, what I had expected to happen began to crop up in the programs. The announcer's tone changed. The ring of triumph was less obvious, less assured. There was more and more talk about acting in good faith, the well-being of all, the necessity for coming to terms about working conditions. I smiled to myself in the darkness. I'd built the fives, brains and all, and I knew their symptoms. They were getting bored. Maybe they had learned to think from me, but their minds were nevertheless different. For they were built to be efficient, to work, to perform. They were the minds of men without foibles, without human laziness. Now that the excitement of organizing was over, now that there was nothing active to do, the androids were growing restless. If only the army didn't come and get them stirred up again, I might be able to deal with them. At 4:45 in the morning, my telephone rang. This time it didn't make me up. I was half waiting for it. "Hello," I said. "Who is it?" "This is Jerry." There was a pause. Then he went on, rather hesitantly. "Rob O. said you were getting along all right." "Oh, yes," I told him. "Just fine." The pause was longer this time. Finally the android asked, "How are you coming along on the contract?" I laughed, rather bitterly. "How do you think, Jerry? You certainly picked a bad time for your strike, you know. The government needs that uranium. Oh well, some other plant will have to take over. The army can wait a few weeks." This time Jerry's voice definitely lacked self-assurance. "Maybe we were a little hasty," he said, "but it was the only way to make you people understand." "I know," I told him. "And you always have some rush project on," he added. "Just about always." "Mr. Morrison," he said, and now he was pleading with me. "Why don't you come over to the city? I'm sure we could work something out." This was what I'd been waiting for. "I will, Jerry," I said. "I want to get this straightened out just as much as you do. After all, you don't have to eat. I do. And I won't be eating much longer if we don't get production going." Jerry thought that over for a minute. "I'll be where we met before," he said. I said that was all right with me, and hung up. Then once again I climbed the stairs to the roof and wheeled the copter out for the trip to the city. It was a beautiful night, just paling into a false dawn in the east. There in the copter I was very much alone, and very much worried. So much depended on this meeting. Much more, I realize now, than the Don Morrison Fissionables Incorporated, much more even than the government's uranium supply. No, the whole future of robot relations was at stake, maybe the whole future of humanity. It was hard to be gloomy on such a clear, clean night, but I managed it well enough. Even before I landed, I could see Jerry's eyes glowing a deep crimson in the dark. He was alone this time. He stood awaiting me, very tall, very proud, and very human. "Hello, Jerry," I said quietly. "Hello, Mr. Morrison." For a moment we just stood gazing at each other in the murky pre-dawn. Then he said sadly, "I want to show you the city." Side by side we walked through the streets of Karen City. All was still quiet. The people were sleeping the exhausted sleep that follows deep excitement. But the androids were all about. They did not sleep, ever. They did not eat either, nor drink, nor smoke, nor make love. Usually they worked, but now... They drifted through the streets, singly and in groups. Sometimes they paused and felt about them idly for the tools of their trades, making lifting or sweeping or computing gestures. Some labourers worked silently, tearing down a wall. They threw the demolished rocks in a heap, and a group of their fellows carried them back and built the wall up again. An air trolley cruised aimlessly up and down the street, its driver ringing out the stops for his non-existent passengers. A little chef type knelt in the dirt of a rich man's garden, making mud pies. Beside me, Jerry sighed. "One day," he said, "just one day, and they come to this." "I thought they would," I answered quietly. Our eyes met in a look of understanding. "You see, Jerry," I said, "we never meant to cheat you. We would have paid you. We will pay you now, if you wish it. But what good will monetary credits be to your people? We need the things money buys, but you need to work." Jerry's voice was flat. "I see now. You were kind not to give brains, real brains, to the robots. They're happy. It's just us fives who aren't." "You're like us," I said softly. He had learned to think from me and from others like me. He had the brain of a man, without the emotions, without the sweet irrationality of men, and he knew what he missed. Side by side we walked through the greying streets, human and android, man and machine, and I knew that I had found a friend. We didn't have to talk any more. He could read my mind, and I knew well enough how his worked. We didn't have to discuss wages or hours or any of the myriad matters that human bargaining agents have to thresh out. We just walked back to my copter, and when we got to it, he spoke. "I'll tell them to go back to work, that we've come to terms," he said. "That's what they want, anyway. Someone to think for them." I nodded. "And if you bring the other 5s to the factory," I said, "we'll work out our agreement." He knew I was sincere. He looked at me for a long moment, and then his great taloned hand gripped mine, and he said what I'd been thinking for a long time. "You're right about that hookup, Mr. Morrison. We shouldn't have it. It can only cause trouble." He paused, and the events of the last 24 hours must have been in his mind as well as in mine. "You'll leave us our brains, of course. They came from you, but take out the telepathy." He sighed then, and his sigh was very human. "Be thankful," he said to me, "that you don't have to know what people think about. It's so disillusioning." Once again his mouth twisted into that strange android grin as he added, "If you send in a hurry call to cybernetics and have a truck come out for us, we'll be de-telepathed in time for work this morning." That was all there was to it. I flew back to the plant and told Jack what had happened, sent a call to the army that everything was settled, arranged with cybernetics for a rewiring on 300 assorted 5-types. Then I went home to a pot of Rob's coffee, the first decent brew I'd had in 24 hours. On Saturday, we delivered to the army right on the dot. Jerry and company had worked overtime. Being intelligent made them better workers, and now they were extremely willing ones. They had their contract. They were considered men, and they could no longer read my mind. I walked into my office Saturday afternoon and sat down by the radio. Jack and Chief Dalton looked across the room at me and grinned. "All right, Don," Jack said. "Tell us how you did it." "Did what?" I tried to act innocent, but I couldn't get away with it. "Fool those robots into going back to work, of course," he laughed. I told them then. Told them the truth. "I didn't fool them," I said. "I just thought about what would happen if they won the rebellion." That was all I had done. Thought about robots built to work who had no work to do, no human pleasures to cater to, nothing but blank, meaningless lives. Thought about Jerry and his disappointment when his creatures cared not a hoot about his glorious dreams of equality. All one night I had thought, knowing that as I thought, so thought the Morrison 5s. They were telepaths. They had learned to think from me. They had not yet had time to really develop minds of their own. What I believed, they believed. My ideas were their ideas. I had not tricked them. But from now on, neither I nor anyone else would ever be troubled by an android rebellion. Jack and the Chief sat back, open-mouthed. Then the Chief grinned, and both of his chins shook with laughter. "I always did say you were a clever one, Don Morrison," he said. I grinned back. I felt I was pretty clever myself just then. It was at that moment that my youngest foreman stuck his head in the door, a rather stunned look on his face. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "will you come out here for a moment?" "What's the matter now?" I sighed. He looked more perplexed than ever. "It's that robot, Jerry," he said. "He says he has a very important question to ask you." "Well, send him in." A moment later, the 8-foot frame ducked through the doorway. "I'm sorry to trouble you, Mr. Morrison," Jerry said politely, "but tomorrow is voting day, you know, and now that we're men, well, Where do we androids go to register? The end. Subscribe for more at storiesoffuturespast.substack.com. And now for the next story. He Who Served by Ray Cummings, originally published in Fantastic Universe, September 1954. Narrated by Tom Trussel. 2RY could remember the quick, bright warmth of the afternoon sun on his burnished copper and silvery plating. He could remember every prideful moment of his early training in the big yard of the James Erg factory. Every afternoon, at first only in good weather, he and others of the newly built had been taken into the yard from the quiet dimness of the storeroom indoors. Not only was he the largest, the finest robot of them all, but he was the most intricately constructed and the most adept at complicated tasks, and he had been the first of the newer models to be trained. There were only 25 others of Model 2RY under construction, the supreme achievement of the genius of James Erg, the culmination of a lifetime of work. For a quarter of a century, no other robot builder had been able to compete with the world-famous Erg product. The big Erg factory in the suburbs of New York dominated the world market, its products ranging from modest one-task models up to the most elaborate. Model 2RY was now the most elaborate, costing $250,000. It was guaranteed slow-trained over a full 2-year period. The training included, of course, additional instruction for any specialized tasks desired by its purchaser, an association with the members of his family so that the timbre of their human voices could produce no untoward reactions. 2RY was big, just under 7 feet. His frozen countenance, with its square-cut contours and faceted eyes, and his sturdy body box gave him the aspect of a rough-hewn statue, but was in no way grotesque. His voice, hollow, yet with several emotional gradations to it, was soft and pleasing. He could remember that the human voice of the instructor was very much like his own, gentle and quiet, and beguiling in its infinite patience. 2RY had been taught just simple things at first. "Turi, come here." He had learned to balance upright the first day. "Come, Turi, stand here by me." With his great jointed legs swinging, and sometimes clanking because of his untrained awkwardness, Turi would obey. "Very good, Turi. Now, sit down. Flat, all the way down. That's it, Turi." How patient the man had remained. "Now, raise your right hand. No, not that one. The right hand, Turi. That's splendid." And when he failed to realize he had made a mistake, the question would come again. "You're using your left hand. Do you understand, Turi?" "Yes," Turi would say. He could remember every glorious moment of those 2 years. Outdoors in rainy weather, with the rain dimming his eye lenses so that he had to learn to polish them with a bit of fabric. And more often, in cold weather, when all his motions seemed to require more effort. His reactions then would be slower if he did not automatically quicken them. Quite as varied were the many tasks indoors in the training rooms. They were mostly domestic tasks, because Turi had been designed essentially not for factory or business work, but for the home. At last he realized that his training was over, and one day soon after that his prospective purchaser came. His name was Robert Dorrit. He was a wealthy man and an important one. The faint, red-glowing beams from Turi's eyes, deep set under his ridged brows, gazed down in apprehension at the man who perhaps might buy him. "So you're trained to be called Turi?" Robert Dorrit asked. "Is that correct?" "Yes," Turi replied, striving to remain calm. "You're right," Dorrit said to James Erg, who stood beside him. "Quite a pleasant, well-modulated voice. Certainly far more human-sounding than the other models." "Try him on emotion," Erg suggested. Dorrit thought a moment. "I'm not sure I'm entirely pleased with you, Turi," he said. "I do not understand why," Turi murmured, contritely. "But I am sorry." "You will find several emotion gradations like that," Erg said. "I see. Yes, it's a very impressive model, Erg. Far in advance of your others." Dorrit smiled thoughtfully. He was a small man, bulging about the middle, with a rosy, pleasant face. "I guess he's worth the price, Erg." The skin around the blue eyes crinkled with tiny traceries of white lines, and Turi suddenly felt glad that Robert Dorrit might purchase him. It was like the glow he experienced when he understood a task and accomplished it perfectly. The next day, Turi learned that the sale had been made. He was to serve in Dorrit's country home up in the hills north of the city. Turi needed no specialized training for that, but he learned that there was to be intensive new task instruction for a month to prepare him for his duties as a domestic helper for Babs Dorrit, the purchaser's daughter, for whom he had been bought. She came with her father the next day, a small brown-haired girl in a trim blue suit. Turi learned afterward that she was 18 years old. "This is Miss Babs, Turi," Erg explained. "You'll have to learn her voice well and be quick to obey. Speak to her now." "Yes, Miss Babs," Turi said. "Talk to him, Babs," Dorrit urged. "Hello, Turi," Babs said. "Give me your hand. I want to grasp it." Turi's mailed hand was sheathed in a soft black glove. He was careful to keep his work pincer retracted, as he had been taught. He held out his hand, keeping it well lowered because the girl was quite small, 2 feet shorter than himself. Her own hand fumbled around for an instant. Fumbled because Babs Dorrit was blind. "It will be comforting," she said, when her fingers at last closed over the glove. "Father, you've made me very happy." "The new training should not take more than a month," Erg said. "You must work with him an hour or 2 each day. You'd better practice walking with him in the city traffic if you plan to go into the city." "Not much," Babs said. "Certainly for this summer, anyway. I'll be staying close to home." "One of my operatives will report tomorrow," Erg told her. "I'll deliver Turi to you this afternoon. You will learn the new tasks, Turi?" "Yes," Turi promised. Then, in the big Erg truck, he was taken up into the hills to the Dorrit summer home, where he remained under weight command in the foyer until the instructor arrived the next day. How warmly he remembered him from the training periods in the factory. Immediately the new task training began. It was simple, letting Babs Dorrit hold his dangling gloved hand, leading her where she directed him to go. For only a short while was the Erg man really needed. The 3 of them took long walks together so that Turi would become familiar with the neighborhood. With the instructor intently watching, Turi soon learned to lead the girl safely through the traffic of the village streets. Quickly he developed a sixth sense alertness to the dangers to Babs that must be seen and avoided. That was the important thing, avoiding danger to this blind girl whose hand he held, avoiding it so that instantly, with permanent order for automatic action instilled in him, his response would come with split-second timing. The voice of the instructor remained everlastingly patient, when for the 100th time he repeated the permanent order so that it would be impressed on Turi beyond the possibility of error. "Danger to Miss Babs must be avoided, Turi. Danger to Miss Babs. Any danger. Do you understand, Turi?" "Yes," Turi replied. He learned all the traffic signals quickly. He was pleased with the warmth inside him that kept getting brighter. "He's all right," the Ergman said at last. "We've certainly given him plenty of tests, Miss Dorrit. His reactions are all that could be desired."
"Yes," Babs agreed. "You've no idea how comforting it is, how safe I feel."
It was nice that she was pleased. She asked,
"You're not mixed up about anything, Turi?"
"No," Turi replied. Then the Ergman went away, and Turi's independent service began. It caused him no confusion. There were the daily walks with Miss Babs, sometimes shopping trips to the village, and visits to the homes of her friends. Everywhere Turi was admired, so large and shining a model he seemed, so comprehensive and smooth of response. Turi glowed inwardly. His brain tapes received the warmth, and his memory etched it down. There was really little for Turi to do but assist and watch over Babs. The Dorrit home was a many-roomed, spacious house set in a grove of trees on a heavily wooded hillside a mile from the village. There were several human servants, and on the day of his arrival they had come in a little group to gaze at him curiously. Babs told him their names and their general duties. There was Annie, the maid, and Higgins and his wife, who served as steward and cook. There were also Tom, the chauffeur, Nerina, who was Miss Babs's personal maid, and old Jacques, the gardener. Mrs. Higgins, that first day, had seemed alarmed. Her whisper to her husband had been very faint, but Turi's electronic hearing grids had picked it up clearly.
"Sure gives you the creeps, that thing looking at you with them red-eye beams."
All the other human servants had warmed to Turi, but Mrs. Higgins had remained hostile. "It's because we ain't never worked in a house with one of those machines, Miss Babs," her husband had murmured apologetically. "Not even a little one."
"She'll get used to it,"
Miss Babs assured him.
"None of you will ever have to give him an order. He'll stand here in the foyer under wait command when I don't need him."
There was little confusion in Turi's new life. During the nights, the foyer and the rooms adjoining it were dim and silent, so that Turi's eye-beams remained motionless while he waited. But by day, his gaze roamed a bit, because there was more sound and movement. Annie, the parlour-maid, would be cleaning and dusting, or the thin, sharp-faced Gil Higgins would be moving about, swiftly, deftly at his duties. And there also was Nerina, she who was Miss Babs's personal maid, who quite often darted to and fro. Of them all, only Nerina ever spoke to him. She would say, "Morning, Turi," and Miss Babs had taught him to respond with a cheery "Hello." It was all very comfortable to Turi, as his memory tapes etched down the many little incidents of the passing days. There was never any bewilderment. He made no mistakes, and he rejoiced in the warmth of his memories. All the things going on around him, here in a house that had been new at first, but that now seemed completely homelike. Mostly Turi liked going out with Babs, which they did nearly every afternoon, when the weather was right. Generally, they stayed out quite a long time, but there was one afternoon when they started, and came quickly back. Feeling unusually tired, Miss Babs went at once upstairs to her room, and Turi resumed his silent, motionless wait command in the foyer recess. For a while there was nothing for his eye-beams to follow. Then he heard the soft tread of Higgins moving about in the library. In the quiet, sombre dimness, Turi's eye-beams shifted. Through the foyer archway he could see Higgins clearly.
The steward was sliding back a wall panel, disclosing a big square metal box which was built solidly into the space behind it. As Turi watched, Higgins turned a knob on the box. It opened, and Higgins took something out and dropped it into his right coat pocket, something which for an instant, as Higgins held it, sparkled in the faint light. Turi had seen the sparkling object before. He had seen it on Miss Babs's neck, and he recognized it instantly. It was a new incident. Never before had he seen anyone open the big metal box except Babs and her father. Higgins closed the box at once, wiping it off carefully with his handkerchief. It was like watching Annie dusting furniture. Then he slid the panel closed, wiped that off also, and came quickly out into the foyer. His tread was almost silent on the heavy rugs as he went back toward the pantry. In the foyer, suddenly he noticed Turi. It seemed to frighten him. "God, it saw me," he muttered to himself. "The blasted machine!" All the rest of that afternoon, Turi could feel confusion faintly stirring in him, because what Higgins had done had been something new. He was vaguely relieved when Nerina passed him, going upstairs with Miss Babs's supper. "Hello, Turi," she said as she went past. "Hello," he responded. There were no visitors that evening. Mr. Dorrit had gone away for about a week, and in his absence the house was much quieter. Still, under weight command, Turi stood in the hall with almost nothing to see and little to hear. At midnight he automatically shifted to be on guard command. It had been part of his training, and after a little while he had never failed to respond properly to the surprise tests the instructor had devised for him. Now Turi's sight beams were intensified, compensating the dimmer light, and the audio circuits were at the highest magnification. He could hear many faint and distant tiny sounds which no human ear could distinguish. Already he was familiar with the accustomed sounds of the night. There was always the faint whir of the many electronic appliances in the house, blending with the ponderous ticking of the big hall clock, and often the stir of the breeze under the eaves, especially on windy nights. Distant murmurs of voices inside the house always came distinctly to Turi when he was on guard command. A few floated to him now. "Yeah, his name's Peter, and he's a nice boy too. Got plenty of money. Soon as I met him, he'd started spending it on me." Turi knew that was Annie, the parlour-maid, who roomed high upstairs with Nerina. Presently there were other, very faint murmurs, faint because they came from the top of the most distant wing of the big house. "Sure I hid it. You don't think I'd be such a fool keeping it here in the house? It's hid down in the woods, in that place I showed you. £30,000 sterling we'll get for the diamond string. It's worth easy, that." "Gil, is it really?" "If it's worth a farthing." The murmurs came from Higgins and his wife. The barking of the dog down the hill swelled louder, so that Turi listened to the animal as it bayed at the moon. It often did that, mostly all night. Then there was Higgins's murmur again. "I say, don't lose your nerve, old gal. It'll be a mess. We'll be suspected, of course, but so will all the staff, which makes it quite all right. See what I mean? Miss Babs being blind, anybody could have sneaked up on her to watch her open that strong box. It's a simple lock. Like I said, anybody could have done it." "Or even a visitor, Gil?" "Of course. Lots of people knew she had that necklace. There'll be a lot of stink when Miss Babs finds out it's been stolen, but they'll never pin it on us. I'm not a fool. Wiped everything off. Not a chance I left any fingerprints." "But Gil, the police, they'll—" "Sure, they'll question us all. So what? We'll just sit tight and leave the necklace down there in the woods while we wait a good 2 years. Then all we do is say we'll have a go at service in England again. I'll sell the diamonds over there one by one. Who'll ever be the wiser?" It was nice to hear the drone of the voices for a while, and then Turi's attention drifted away. The weathercock on the roof gables began squeaking again. It was always loud on windy nights. It blended with the human voice murmurs. "I didn't know the blasted thing was in the house, I tell you. I thought it had taken Miss Babs out for a walk." "Gil, it saw you take the necklace." "It did, but I tell you I didn't know it had come back with Miss Babs. I never thought about it at all." "You could have waited until some other day. You could have—" "Stop jawing at me, Mary. It's done now." "But it will tell what it saw." "Don't be a fool. That blasted machine's not smart enough to talk, not unless somebody questions it." "But they will question it. Miss Babs will ask it if it saw anyone at the safe." "Not until she finds out the necklace is gone, and she won't find out until she goes to that party Friday night. Gives me 3 days to shut up that damn machine. You'll see." "Gil, I'm scared. It could even be listening to us now. It's down there in the foyer, and I heard Miss Babs say once that when it's on guard command it can hear better than any dog." The voices softened a little. Turi's eye-beams swung idly around the foyer as he listened to the human voices, and the baying dog down the hill, and the creaking weathercock. It was very simple, being on guard command. There was no danger here. Miss Babs was safe. He could remember how the instructor had given him the permanent order to guard Miss Babs. The human voices went on droning. "So it's listening to us now. So what? A machine can't say or do anything on its own. You have to give it an order. And I'll tell you, I got everything figured out. Nobody's going to question a machine to find out what's on its memory tapes. I'm not that much of a fool." "Gil, what are you going to do?" "Smash it, that's what. I'm going to take it out tomorrow night and smash it to smithereens." "Gil, you're crazy. You wouldn't dare go near it. It's got the strength of 50 men. "That's how much you know. I'll take it outdoors in the night. You know that little catwalk swing bridge over the gorge? It's only about a mile from here. Well, it's been condemned. A sign on it says you don't dare cross it now. It ain't safe and might collapse." "I know. I saw the sign. But Gil—" "So I take that blasted machine out there and I order it to walk across the bridge. A machine that weighs a couple of tons will crash, won't it? 200 feet down to the rocks. Smash, Mary. The memory tape of what it saw and heard gone forever. See what I mean? Simple, eh?" "But Gil, how can you take it out for a walk? It won't take orders from you. It won't, will it?" "No, maybe it wouldn't right now. But I'll fix that tomorrow afternoon. And tomorrow night I'll take it out. What difference what anybody suspects if they can't prove anything? A piece of damn machinery goes wrong, wanders out in the middle of the night and gets itself smashed, ruined. Who can prove different?" "But Gil, suppose it turned on you. Suppose, while you're ordering it out—" "Don't you see I have no choice? If that thing blabbed it saw me take the diamond string, I'd be done for. A machine can't lie, Mary. It's got a memory record nobody could get away from. Go to sleep now. Let me do the worrying." The human voices went silent. The big foyer clock was sonorously chiming. Turi could remember that Erg's reception room at the factory had a chiming clock too. Now, as the hours passed and the new day began, Turi stood in his hall niche with his eye-beams fixed on the usual resting place across the foyer. Soon it would be time to shift automatically from guard command to wait command. It was nice to know that he never made any mistakes. Most of all, that was what he prided himself on. The next afternoon Miss Babs took him for a walk again. It was a day of dancing summer sunlight, and very happily he led her down the little path through the garden and out the side gate where the road passed that led to the village. "Take the path to the stream, Turi. Then we can come back the other way, around the hill." "Yes, Miss Babs," Turi said. They had walked here many times, and it was easy not to do it wrong. Turi followed the road until they reached the rocky hill that lay beyond it. The stream roared as it tumbled through the ravine, where the swaying catwalk swing bridge dangled from a dizzy height across the cliff tops. Here in the open, it was placidly babbling over moss-covered stones. He remembered how Miss Babs had told him that the little brook was always happy here because it laughed all the time. At the stream edge, she sat down in the sunlight, and motionless under weight command, Turi stood pridefully at her side. A big flyer was faintly roaring as it passed high overhead. The red eye-beams of Turi's gaze streamed up to it, but he didn't have to be alert, because it wasn't dangerous to Miss Babs. Presently he heard footsteps approaching and recognized the tread of Higgins. He had been aware of the sound very faintly behind him almost all the way from the house. Then Higgins came in sight. He walked straight past Turi toward Miss Babs. "Nice afternoon, Miss Babs," he said.
"Oh, is that you, Higgins?"
the blind girl asked. "That it is, ma'am. My day off, you know. A chap can do with a bit of walking outdoors now and then."
"Yes, it's a beautiful day, Higgins,"
Miss Babs agreed. The steward's slim, wiry body was clad in a white-striped blue suit, and he wore a high, stiff collar and a red necktie. He had no hat, so that the summer breeze was ruffling his thin, sandy hair. He lingered, standing beside Babs with a cigarette dangling from his lips. Turi waited motionless nearby, and presently he knew from the unheeded blur of their words that they were talking of Model 2RY. "And I never once spoke to it, Miss Babs, not all this time." The girl smiled.
"Did you want to, Higgins?"
"Well, I don't know. Gives you a sort of rummy feeling, a thing like that standing around all the time. Shall I try speaking to it now, Miss Babs?" She laughed.
"Of course, if you wish. Go ahead and say hello to him."
"Hello, Turi," Higgins said.
"Hello,"
Turi responded. It was just like Narina's greeting, and easy to answer properly. "Science is sure wonderful," Higgins said. "He remembers everything he ever knew, don't he? That's what Mr. Dorrit was saying. The thing's got a memory tape that puts everything down, just like he was writing it in the book. Does he learn new things easy, Miss Babs?"
"Yes, he's quite quick to learn,"
Miss Babs assured him. "What I mean, if you tell him something new, not just something he's been taught, what would he do? Could I try him out, Miss Babs?"
Why, yes, I suppose so."
Miss Babs frowned.
"Try if you want to, Higgins, but you'd better make it something simple."
Higgins swung around. "Wade across the stream, Turi," he said. Turi's eye-beams lifted. It was an order taking him off weight command. He started to move, then stopped. Something seemed to be wrong, and was trying very hard not to make a mistake. It was like those puzzling moments in his training when he couldn't decide what he should do. "It would be bad for you to get your legs wet, wouldn't it?" Higgins asked.
"No,"
Turi responded. His eye-beams swung to Babs.
"Do it, Turi,"
Babs said. The wide rocky stream was shallow directly below the gorge, so that it hardly wet Turi's knees as he waded across. "Now, come back," Higgins called. Turi came back. Again under automatic weight command, he stood motionless. He knew that he had done the task properly. It was strange that the unpleasant feeling inside him should persist. It was just as though he had done something wrong. "Certainly is a real wonderful, Miss Babs," Higgins was exclaiming. "Real wonderful." He gave Turi a few more orders while Babs listened, and Turi responded dutifully. But it all seemed wrong. Turi was glad when Higgins lighted another cigarette and wandered on. And then presently Turi was leading the girl home around the base of the rocky hill in the familiar way he knew so well. It was Turi's last task for the day, and nightfall found him quiescent again in the hall niche. A storm was in the making, so that there were more little noises than usual, especially after midnight when his hearing became sharpened. At monotonous intervals the big clock chimed, but soon after midnight the voice murmurs in the house died away. Then they started again, and it made Turi's eye-beams shift and his head cock a little sidewise as he listened. The voices were familiar, and he knew it was Higgins and his wife whispering together in the east wing.
"Oh, Gil, be careful."
"Sure I will. I can handle that blasted thing now. I gave it lots of orders this afternoon." The murmurs blurred into the wind under the eaves. The night had been mostly cloudy, Turi knew, because no moonlight showed at the windows. But there was a little moonlight there now. Turi stood in his hall niche, watching it. Presently he could hear faint distant footsteps, a familiar tread, and he knew that Higgins was coming softly down through the house. It was so new a thing that a queer, sharp jangling sprang up in Turi. He was on guard command, ready to give an alarm call if the need came. He remembered his guard command training, the surprise tests in the night, the whispers of two strange men outside a window he'd been guarding. It had been easy to give the alarm call then, but surely this was different. It was so hard trying to understand. Somehow it seemed that now there were things in his memory, things he had seen and heard, that ought to fit together like little widely scattered parts of a difficult order. You had to understand all the parts. He wanted very much to understand, because when he didn't, he made mistakes. It had seemed easy during his training. He wondered why Higgins was giving him parts so much harder to fit together than anything he had ever tried to understand before. The faint sound of Higgins's tread was growing louder. Turi's gaze clung alertly to the staircase as he waited. Presently Higgins was at the top, and coming quietly, swiftly down the padded steps. He was wrapped in a greatcoat, with a dark hat on his head. Turi stirred. One of his feet jerked with an impulse to move, but he remained motionless. Surely there was no need to shift to alarm order and give a warning cry. Higgins was a member of the household. "Answer me soft, Turi," Higgins said, his voice low and tense. "You and I are going out together. You understand what I'm saying?"
"Yes,"
Turi answered softly. It was easy to understand. Miss Babs often would tell him that they were going out, and he would wait until she was ready. Turi stood motionless. In the faint red glow of his eye-beams, the sweat beads on Higgins's thin, sallow face glistened with tiny, sparkling points of light. "You've learned to take orders from me," Higgins said. "Remember? Even new orders."
"Yes, I remember,"
Turi said. He remembered that Babs had asked him to obey the orders. That seemed to make a difference. Now Higgins was standing a little back toward the foyer wall, away from Turi. He said, "I'm taking you out with me. We're leaving by the front door. You go first." Turi's eye-beam swayed, his great burnished body standing irresolute. He could feel his legs and arms trembling, because the jangle of confusion was suddenly worse in him. It seemed terribly hard not to make a mistake. Higgins's voice was insistent, even though it remained soft. "Get going, Turi. You'll obey orders, won't you?"
"Yes,"
Turi responded. "Then open the front door." Turi's great measured steps took him to the door. The latch fastenings clanked as he opened them, because his arms and hands were trembling. The heavy door swung wide and bumped back against the stopper with a thump. "I told you not to make a noise," Higgins murmured sharply. Turi remembered. He always remembered the right response when he had done something wrong. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not mean to do anything wrong." He stood at the open doorway, trying to stop the quivering in his legs. "You go first," Higgins whispered. "Take the garden path to the side gate. Start now." With slow, long strides, Turi went out and down the little steps. He could hear Higgins softly closing the door after them. Broken clouds floated overhead, and the dim garden was faintly silvered with moonlight. The garden path was a little threading passage between the shrubs and flower beds. "Keep going, Turi. You hear me?" "Yes," Turi said. He could hear Higgins's breathing close behind him. And back at the house, suddenly now there were faint sounds. As he turned back to stare, he heard the click of the front door opening, and a familiar voice calling to him. "Turi! Turi!" It was Babs. Very clear was the tapping of her cane as she felt her way out to the flagging outside the door. Turi would have responded, even without direct command, but instantly Higgins muttered, "Don't speak, Turi." Turi did not speak. He remembered that always a direct command had to be responded to first. Higgins jerked at his arm. "Come with me, over here. Stand quiet." They stood a few feet off the path, by the edge of a shrub. "She's blind. She can't see us," Higgins whispered. "And she mustn't hear us either. Don't make any noise." Silently, Turi stood with his eye-beams widely swaying. If only Miss Babs would give him a direct order. He wanted so desperately to obey it. Now the summer moonlight aureoled the slender figure of Babs as she came slowly along the garden path, feeling her way with her cane. If only he could have led her as he always did. "Turi, surely I heard you opening the front door," she called out suddenly. "Where are you, Turi? Answer me." Before Higgins could interfere, Turi spoke loudly. "Here I am, Miss Babs." "Turi, you shouldn't have come out. Did someone order you?" "Yes, Miss Babs." "Who was it, Turi?" Higgins' whispered protests were vehement, but Turi hardly heard them. "Higgins," Turi said. "Higgins ordered you? Where is he now, Turi?" "He is here beside me, Miss Babs." Higgins cursed bitterly and stepped out into the moonlight. I didn't tell him to come out, Miss Babs," he said. "Oh, so you're here, Higgins?" The blind girl's voice sounded startled. Turi could see them standing together on the garden path, the moonlight pallid on Higgins's frightened face. "I came out to get the blasted thing," Higgins said quickly. "I saw him out there and thought I'd have a go at getting him back." "You couldn't have made a mistake, Turi," Babs said. "Answer me carefully now. Why did you come out?" "He told me to obey him," Turi said. "He told me to go and open the front door quietly." "So you ordered him out," Babs said. "I can't understand this, Higgins. What possible reason?" "I didn't," Higgins protested. "He's got it all mixed up." "It has to be true," Babs told him. She was calmly angry. "We'll go back to the house now, Higgins. We'll soon see why you—" "Oh, no, we won't." In a panic, Higgins had suddenly gripped her shoulders. "I don't know what he's talking about. It's all crazy talk. Crazy." "Higgins, take your hands off me. How dare you?" "You think I'm letting a crazy machine say things about me? I'm telling you." "Take your hands off me, Higgins." Now the struggling Babs was frightened. It sent a horrible jangle through Turi. There was something wrong, and Miss Babs was frightened about it. Suddenly he saw that she was trying to scream, and Higgins in a panic had put his hand over her mouth. Within Turi, the jangling confusion grew worse, as if some horrible corroding acid burned at him. He had a permanent order always to avoid danger to Miss Babs. Wasn't she in danger now? It was so terribly hard, trying to puzzle things out without training memory or an order. He could feel the jangle mounting to a bursting tumult. If only he could think for himself, act for himself, without any orders. He heard himself saying, "I want to hold your hand and lead you, Miss Babs." The words so startled the two humans in front of him that they ceased to struggle. It was as though Model 2RY suddenly had crossed a great abyss, and it was terrifying. Why, Turi!" Babs cried. "I want to hold your hand and lead you, Miss Babs. I am going to do it now." Turi's great metal legs clanked as he took a slow step forward. "The thing's gone wild," Higgins choked. "It's coming at us. Tell it to keep away from us. You tell it." "Wait, Turi," Babs whispered. "You here!" Higgins almost screamed. "You hear that, you crazy—" "No," Turi said. The disobedience was a shattering thing. It so frightened Turi, hearing his own voice say it, that his huge body stood twitching with a chaos impossible to control. "I am going to lead you home, Miss Babs. It is better for us to go home now." It was more than just independent thinking. Turi didn't know what it was, but in all the tumult within him there seemed to be the knowledge that this was the only right thing for him to do. Now he was clanking forward with determined steps. Higgins jumped behind Babs and gasped wildly, "You keep away!" "No," Turi said. In the confused darkness of her blindness, the girl was stammering something. Turi did not hear it. His swinging heavy hand reached down, and she recoiled from it, as if terrified by his inhuman strength. In his awkwardness, he reached out again, and she gave a little cry and wilted down at his feet. He said, "Miss Babs, I am sorry. I did not mean to frighten you. I will carry you home now." It was as though a floodgate had broken, releasing in Turi an enormous surge of shining confidence. Higgins had backed further down the path, and Turi's eye-beams swung to his pallid, panic-stricken face. "You keep away from me!" Higgins gasped. "No," Turi said. "You got to take orders from me, do you hear?" Turi moved from the fallen Babs and started remorselessly toward Higgins. In wild panic, Higgins stooped, picked up a stone, and sent it clanking against the glistening plate of Turi's chest. Turi continued to advance, his hands extended with the work pincers out. For just an instant, like a terror-stricken animal with its foot in a trap, Higgins stood shaking. Then he turned and fled down the path, to no avail. With monstrous clanking bounds, Turi was on him as he reached the garden gate. It was all a strange and terrible confusion to Turi. Dominating him was the thought that he must carry Miss Babs back in safety, just as if she had been hit by an autocar and needed instant care. Now he had caught Higgins up and was pressing the frail human body against his massive chest. There may have been an instant when Higgins screamed and struggled, but if there was, it was soon over. The mangled thing became quiet. Turi found himself on the highway that passed along the foot of the hill. Beyond, the steeply rising, ragged cliff was dark against the sky, and a light was suddenly bathing Turi as he stood irresolute in the road with his burden, the headlights of an oncoming autocar. It ground to a stop, and men leaped out and stood gasping. "It's Dorrit's new model! It has killed a man!" Another car came along, and the distress sirens of both cars started wailing. Then a police car arrived, and still Turi stood confused and trembling, grasping the thing that had been a man. It was terribly frightening, because so many new thoughts seemed to be needed to make sense of the confusion. Now he could hear the men. "Don't try to give it orders, it might leap at us." And a voice from back at the garden. "Here's Babs Dorrit. It must have killed her too." No, that was wrong. Surely he had not hurt Miss Babs. He saw them up in the garden, bending over her. Somebody shouted, "She's fainted!" He didn't want anyone to hurt Miss Babs. He would not permit anyone to hurt her, because he had a permanent order to protect her. The humans were all babbling. "If we could get the fuse out of it—" "It's up in the centre of the back, up at the shoulders, isn't it?" "I wouldn't know. It's a new model." "Take the fuse out? Out of him? The fuse?" "Maybe we could hit the eye lenses with bullets." "No, no. With smashed eye lenses he would be blind, like Miss Babs. How could he guide her through the village traffic if his eye lenses were broken?" "Don't get too close. It might jump at us." Now bullets were thudding against Turi. He thought for an instant one of them had hit an eye lens, but it was only the metal plate on his forehead. The bullets sang after him as he flung Higgins's body down and fled up into the darkness of the rocky cliff. The dawn was approaching, and still, somewhere up in the rocky darkness, Model 2RY was crouching. Everyone knew that he could not have taken refuge elsewhere, for the cliff had been surrounded. James Erg had been summoned and had arrived in an Erg truck. Dorrit, too, had been hastily sent for, and there was a swarm of police. Erg stood with Dorrit, a little apart from the men in uniform. The grey-haired scientist was pale, frightened, and awed. "This model of yours," Erg said, "is fortunately the only one of its kind I've sold, Dorrit. I'll refund your money, of course, and never make another 2RI robot. I dare not do anything else." Babs had talked with her father, and the hysterical-stricken Mary Higgins had confessed the theft of the diamond string and revealed where her husband had hidden it. Everyone knew all of the circumstances now. "It encountered so many problems so far afield from its training," James Erg was saying. "It's understandable in a way, but I never anticipated anything like this." Something new had been added by a mysterious destiny to Model 2RY, something that not all the genius of science could build into it. "It beats me," one of the Erg instructors said. "You can't build fear into a machine, but it's hiding up there now because it's afraid." Babs Dorrit's hair gleamed brightly in the dawnlight on the rocky hillside. "You try calling to him, Babs," Dorrit suggested. "You were closer to him than any of us." She called, quaveringly, "Turi! Turi, where are you? Can you hear me?" He could hear her where he crouched, trembling. "Here I am, Miss Babs," he called back. Her father prompted her. She called again. "We are going to take the fuse out, Turi." No, no, that would be wrong. He did not want that. In fear and trembling he heard her voice again. "Stand up, Turi." He wanted very much to do what was right, but this— "Stand up, Turi." He stood with the rose glow of the coming sunlight glistening on him. Now he could see Miss Babs clearly, low down among the rocks, with men around her. One of the men was whispering to her. "Turn your back to us, Turi," she called suddenly. He turned around. His knees clanked with a trembling, but he steadied himself. "Now lie down, Turi, flat, all the way down." He lay staring up the wavering eye-beams. He could see the clouds high up, flushed with the dawnlight. An air-car was drifting past up there, but an air-car was not a danger to Miss Babs. "We're sending a man up to take the fuse out, Turi. Turn over, face down. That's it. Do this for me, Turi." He lay with his face pressing into the rocky ground. The rock was dark and blurred, so close to his eye lenses. He could remember how proud he'd felt down there in the warm sunlit valley, standing and await command beside Miss Babs. She had said that the little brook as it babbled over the stones was laughing. It was always happy, because it laughed all the time. How he wished that he could hear the brook now. "The Ergman is coming," the girl called. "Don't move, Turi." It was very strange that Miss Babs would order this. He tried desperately to reason why, but he could not. Now he heard her voice again. "Will you lie quiet, Turi, when he takes out the fuse? Answer me." "Yes, Miss Babs, I will lie quiet." Now the Ergman was bending over him. He pressed his face down harder against the rock. And there was Babs's voice calling once more. Her voice with something in it that Turi never had heard directed at him before. It was the voice humans used to one another. "Goodbye, Turi." He was so desperately frightened. The fuse of Model 2RY came out with a little click. The hissing, throbbing tumult inside the glistening body faded into silence. The turgid red eye-beams down against the rock went dark. Something which had been was gone, and there was left only a motionless piece of machinery.
The end. To help save more of the forgotten stories of futures past, visit storiesoffuturespast.substack.com/about.